Welcome to Raw Painting. In this video series, we're just going to be painting miniatures. You're going to get a bird's eye view of me just painting miniatures. It's raw, uncut. We're going to post it as it's recorded, so there's never any telling what's going to be said. If you like watching miniatures being painted, if you've got tips, tricks you want to pick up, if you want to add any content in the comments below, I'll be happy to reply to them. And let's just jump in and paint some miniatures. All right, welcome back. We're painting on our Reaper Frost Giant, and today I want to finish out the axe. Once we finish out this, then we're going to be doing the other accessories that go on his belt. So, paint today I'm using an Adobe Brown and a tan. So last week we split up the video into 3 different parts. Love to hear your feedback, see what you thought of that. Was that better than one long painting session? Or do you prefer the long ones? We want to make sure that we're getting you the content you like, so definitely let us know your preferences. This one here, again, I'm excited to get closer and closer to being done on. This has been fun to do, but a challenge for sure. I'm starting to second guess my choices on this axe shaft, but I'm going to commit. I'm going to commit because I have a plan. I am going to use a thin coat of this Adobe Brown or light brown. And I'm going to dry brush it with a dark brown. Be really careful here where we painted that ring on last time. The ends is where we'll use the tan, show kind of the center of the wood. I'm still getting used to my painting rig here. Got it set up with the camera to give a bird's eye view. So I'm painting around it. So occasionally you'll see me move my brush. That's just so I can get around the armature. Get a really good angle. We are getting some new equipment soon, so that'll change things up. Of course, we're in our infancy. Really in our infancy, so we're still experimenting with the equipment we had on hand that was going to be for our retail. Due to COVID, we've put those plans on the back burner and wanted to still reach out to the community and provide some content. We hope that you enjoy the different series we're putting out. If you're not familiar with them, subscribe to the channel You'll see all the content. Raw painting is just me sitting here painting. I'm going to be talking. I'm not going to listen to music because copyright laws, of course. We don't have any licenses for any music here, so we're not going to take any chances. We don't want any patent attorneys making money off of us. Not that there's anything wrong with patent attorneys, just in any civil court cases when there's copyrights and patents being discussed and reviewed, they are the only ones who make any money. So that's a decent rough color. The axe head, of course, we did last time. And like I said, I think I'm going to change it up here a little bit and switch brushes. Set that one down. And I am just going to work a little bit on a dry brush. Make sure that's all nice and dry, and then because this has got such good texture already carved in, that initial base layer is going to shine through or show through pretty decent. Because we painted that dark and painted this layer with the Adobe Brown thin, just used it thin down. Some of that initial brown will show through, and then as we dry brush, it just augments the second layer of brown. Not too bad, not too bad. I think I'm making it pretty decent. Just nice and light, real thin dry brush. Multi-layered effect. It's giving it that kind of worn wood look. I'm liking that pretty well. I'll do the same up here. Get the edges. Gives it a lot of dimension. And now going to the tan a little bit. So these multiple colors on here really tend to give it a lot of character. So you might be panicking here that seems awful light, and it does, but we're doing that for a reason. This is going to be like an underpainting to give that a very light center. But if you've ever had an axe, you know that it isn't fresh cut, so it isn't like bark and then the inner workings. So we're going to let that dry a minute. And then while that's drying for a minute, we're going to come back here to our frost giant, who's getting close to being done. One area before we can secure his arms that we need to do are these leather straps. So, of course, we've done quite a bit of leather on him already. However, that bit there, we wanted to wait until the belt itself was done. And I should have had my palette ready first, but I was doing some additional painting. I've been thinking about, as we go to base this frost giant, the basing can take a bit. So I'm actually going to start working on the next mini while we're basing this one. We'll keep it in the mini painting, of course, just so you can see the progress on the base as well. But we will start to do the next mini at the same time that we're basing this fellow. That way you can see this one's progress to the end, and you'll get a start on the second one, which is good because this one here we started on Facebook Live and few people were watching us, but we were painting so long and so late that a couple of people asked us if we could switch it and put it on YouTube because I wasn't able to save them on Facebook Live, of course, because I had been listening to music at the same time. And I guess when you're live you can listen to music, but you can't save your videos if it's got music that could be copyrighted. And it is a little challenging to paint without the music, I must say. It is different. But I found if I put one headphone in, I can listen to my music. It won't record, and I don't break any rules. Whoop. Hook 'em. Hooked him with those massive horns, which are not historically accurate for Norse settings, which these fellows are supposed to be based off of. If you talk about anything Scandinavian or Norwegian, or I guess Norse in general, with horned helmets, boy, you are asking to open a can of worms. But it's iconic and very, well, I guess iconic is just the best word for it. It's very iconic when you think of Nordic things, to think of, for many people anyhow, to think of massive horned helmets. Alright, let's go back to this bad boy. And we're taking that brown, just really, really thinned down. Now, we're just going to go right over top of that tan to give it some tone, to tie it back into the brown mid layer on that axe. Now it looks bright there, and it will, once that dries, it'll tone it down a little bit, but it'll still be lighter than the rest of the haft. So you still have that illusion, but it's not going to be as stark as like a cartoon. And then once that dries, we'll go over it with a darker wash, and that will be done, ready for sealing. Using these paints nice and thin allows them to dry so that we can go back in and paint a little more. And of course, this video here, we're going to continue the test on shorter videos. So this video is not going to be as long. Of course, we want your feedback on that. Do you prefer them to be shorter videos where we don't get as much done, but you can watch it while you're on your break, while you're eating your lunch, in between other shows that you're streaming? Give us your feedback. What's your preference? We want to make our content easy for everybody to enjoy. So what makes it easier for you? On time. Do you want to see more progress? Do you want to see shorter videos? Make sure you comment and let us know. And just about got that base coat set. There, nice. Now this leather is going to be very similar to the vest and the boots because we want it really to contrast with that leather belt, that dark kind of reddish brown belt. But we'll come back to that here in just a second. Let's jump back to that. And we're going to do one more very thin coat of the brown. Again, we're just toning that tan. That's all we're doing, toning down that tan. And then that will be the final coat for that arm. We'll be able to seal it and put it with the other arm, and then we're going to do on that same handle the pack and treasure chest that goes on his back. Those will sit right like that. Of course, before we tack it in, I'll give it one more wash, even though I've already put a gray coat on there, just to make sure it's nice and clean. We don't have any of the oils from our fingers on it. Now we're going to prep up for the, I guess I call it tinting on the leather. Well, I said this is going to be similar to that leather on the vest and the boots. This brown you'll see that we're going to be using in this wash is going to be very dark. And lay that on. I hope that's centered. Remember, it's new equipment, or a new setup anyhow. We're waiting on some new equipment. Be a little bit before that's ready to go, but when it is, you'll notice a difference right away. And we are in our infancy, so everything is not going to be perfect right now. We just want to know content-wise, are you enjoying the content? Alright, get that wash on there, let that dry out. So that tone is pretty dark, so it won't pop out as much as that yet. When we start re-edging with the leather and then highlighting up those leather edges, you'll see a larger contrast come through. But we've got to let that wait. We've got to let that dry. As much as I want to paint that. That's one of the challenging things now. We've got the axe done. We've got the Frost Giant started on that, but we've got to let that dry. I suppose what we could do, let's start maybe doing some hair. Let me pull some paint out of the dripper pot, pour some onto the palette here. I am using a wet palette. So a fancy way of saying some parchment paper on some sponges and some water and some Tupperware. It's a super easy setup that I use. And I'm just trying to be mindful of the time. I am going to go ahead and just start working on laying down a base coat on the hair. That'll be the next step we do. And again, this is just because we're waiting for that other coat to dry. Keeping these timepieces is actually kind of challenging. Because while we want to be mindful of the time, we want to give you good content so you can see good progression. What's the ideal video time for you? Maybe I'll have to look up some online polls maybe. I know it varies from video to video. Some people will be able to watch cats for 14 hours. I don't know if you can watch mini painting for 2 hours. I don't know. I could paint them though. I could definitely paint for multiple hours. If you watch any of my early videos, you'll be able to see that. I do like painting. When I started painting, I had just fond memories from painting as a kid. Miniatures that my oldest brother had gotten, and he would order them out of Dragon magazine. If I remember correctly, they were Grenadier and Ral Partha miniatures. And on occasion he would get a couple that he would let me and some of the other brothers paint, and it was more just so he'd stay out of his hair and let him paint the ones that he wanted to. Or maybe he didn't want to paint them all and he just wanted to be able to use them, so he'd enlist us to help paint. I do have some very fond memories of that though. Winter days, or really rainy days. Testors paints, big blocky paint brushes comparatively. And they were model brushes, but compared to the brushes that I use today, they are very different. Very, very different. Couple hard spots there, whereas if beard goes into a mustache, underneath that horn,
And right alongside that helmet. And again, this is just a base coat. We'll go back through and do a shadow wash and start working on highlighting. And you'll see this is, right now, this is a red-brown. We are going to, I thought about making him blonde, but I thought with the polar bear cape, the polar bear fur that we painted on the cape, I thought we'd do red hair. Got a lot of Nordic ancestors, and red hair isn't exclusive to the Irish, as it turns out. In my family, we get a lot of red hair, especially in like mustaches and beards. Then if you try to dye your hair, red highlights there as well. And I'm probably not in frame. Sorry about that. And just going through with a pretty healthy coat in here. And this is thinned down, so this isn't very thick or heavy. Just laying in some color. It's just so we can go back in and have a base coat to start with. Generally, when I'm working on areas this big, as textured as this beard and hair are, I also like to use a little bit heavier brush, but because I'm going back and forth with edging around the mouth and the helmet, the cape, I want to use this brush because it is a little more precision oriented with a finer tip, so I can still keep those nice tight lines. And this doesn't have to be perfect for the base coat, just really good thin even coverage. Thin is the key. Thin is the key, because we will be going over this with more colors and more layers, because the beard is kind of a iconic piece to this mini. We want to make sure we give it its due. Really do justice to it. Excuse me. Want to try to get all these lower details. I should adapt my brush there just to pull out that extra, but I'm trying to move fairly fast while keeping some precision. Just again, it's about good initial coverage. Let's turn him over there. Again, if the angles aren't right, don't hesitate. Comment, let me know. When I'm editing, I will check and see. Of course, there isn't much editing because this is raw painting. All I'm going to do is add an intro and add an exit. Otherwise, you just get me sitting here painting, talking about my day, which today was a pretty productive day. Had a lot to do and got a good amount of it done. Gonna do some follow-up pieces tomorrow on some things, but overall I was pretty happy with the progress I made at my regular full-time job, since we weren't able to open our retail location. I've just kept my day job, as everybody would call it, and until that changes and we're able to open up our retail center and see how the public likes our concept, then we're going to wait. But we think we've got a great idea for a game center. I think we're in a really good market here in the Houston area for it. Seems like there are quite a few people who are interested in gaming, playing RPGs, and because there are so many places that are like apartments, while there are plenty of people who have locations to game and would prefer to shop online, having that local option I think is a great option for people, especially newer people to the hobby, where they haven't purchased property yet and they're in an apartment. They're saving some dollars, but still looking at ways that they can support their local business, meet with friends and family, and enjoy things like tabletop games. I think they're really going to like our concept once we get open. So I'm going to be excited to cut that ribbon on day one. But we've got to get through the COVID first. Get through the COVID. If you like miniature painting or looks interesting or anything, this would be a good way for you to get through COVID as well. It's very relaxing in many ways, and can help pass the time and keep you from getting frustrated at news or online mob pits. Just get some paints and paint. If you're interested in it, there is a miniature painting expo coming up in March. It's online. Check it out on Reaper Miniatures, reapermini.com. So we're painting a Reaper Mini right now. I've said at each show, each video, they are not a sponsor. So when I tell you that you'll enjoy the Reaper sculpts, that I enjoy the Reaper sculpts, you can take my word for it. It is not because they're paying me to say that. It is genuine admiration for the sculpts and the community, and just very good. All right, we're at about 34 minutes now. Boy, that eats the time, doesn't it? You can see we've got our belt. Now those shadows dried. So we're going to try to whip this out here real quick. I promise I won't keep you too long. I'll make this as fast as possible. I'm going to go through and just drop in some edging and then a couple of little spiky points. That's where leather is starting to tear a little bit and wear. You'll see it. Things like leather jackets or gloves, anything like that. You got a good pair of work gloves, you know all about it. You got a good belt that you like. You wear it a lot. It starts to get those little tear points. Any rubbing it does. Get those little rough edges. Those are always lighter because generally the darker leather is stain and not the leather itself. So you want those edges to be, or those worn areas to be lighter in color. Then on top of that, we're going to use just a little bit of khaki mixed in with our leather. That's going to be even lighter. We're just going to pick out a couple of spots where that has worn even more. It's going to be even lighter in tone. And just go nice and soft, real easy. Pick out a couple of spots where that's faded even more. Anywhere it's worn a little bit heavier. And pick those out. And then the last thing we're going to do is an even lighter. And then this is going to be extreme worn areas. We're going to go super liberal on these, not much at all. So gentle. We're going to use this to kind of separate areas where multiple layers kind of converge, just to give good separation tone so it shows up to the eye a little bit better. And then anywhere that we've got the most wear. And just like that, we have got those leather details done. It doesn't do it justice in the camera now that I'm looking at it, but when you see the pictures of the before and after, you'll see quite a bit. And that covers our axe, which we're going to spray and coat and seal so we can put our little bits of additional pieces on there, as well as that leather and a base coat of red for our Reaper Frost Giant, who's getting closer and closer to being done. Next time we'll finish up this a little bit more, we'll give it another layer and then start shading and highlighting that beard. And that's what we'll plan for the next one, the beard and hair. Hope you enjoyed, and make sure you subscribe, comment down below what you think.
Thanks for watching our video. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we'd love to have you subscribe. Feel free to hit that button if you care to get notifications for when we post new content. Leave your comments below and help us answer the question of where will your adventures take you. Enjoy.